Welcome to your Daily 5 for Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. I think I've talked about this in at least a couple times on the show and maybe in some fives, but I have fallen down in the last 5 to 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, a curiosity rabbit hole of YouTube channels that are covering games from when I was younger. Often games that I never even knew existed, that actually most people probably didn't know existed because they are so far off the beaten path or so unusual or strange or reviewed so poorly. And I've talked about some of these channels before: Sean Shaunson, Tangomushi, Grimbeard, The Sphere Hunter. These are channels that are revolving in around, say, the PlayStation 1 era, or survival horror games, or just point-and-click adventure games that don't necessarily work all that well, but are fascinating specimens. And one of the ones that Grimbeard covered, I think I may have watched one other channel, but I can't remember now, that also covered the same game, is a Harlan Ellison story-based game titled I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Now, I know the title of that story. I've never actually read it. In fact, and it's something that echoes Ubik, where maybe I'll discover that I have. I don't think I've ever actually read anything of Ellison's. My only familiarity really, I mean, I know the name. I understand that the kind of larger-than-life personality that he has. And I know his work famously on the Star Trek episode, The City on the Edge of Forever or Tomorrow. I don't remember the title. But I knew the title of this story, but I didn't know really anything about it. And it is probably one of the more harshly depressing stories. Maybe not. I haven't read his entire thing, so maybe this is actually something happy in his canon, but it sure doesn't seem like it. And just in general, it's not what I would call a happy, fun time story. And so the idea that of all Ellison's work, they took this story and decided to adapt it into a video game that Ellison initially wanted to make unwinnable is so fascinating to me, because it is such a potential train wreck of an idea that it really just became something that I was kind of interested in. And I didn't actually intend to ever play it, but Night Dive Studios, one of the kind of big names in remastering and remaking games right now, one of the better studios doing it anyway, recently remastered this, and it's released on Steam as part of a bundle of adventure games of this era. So for $7, you get this game, as well as I think 4 others, one of which I'm also interested in because it seems so bonkers, called Harvester. And again, I don't know that I ever would have played this game if it was, I wasn't going to go out there and try to, emulate it or anything like that, because games like this can be very, very notoriously difficult, buggy, or just not working. But the fact that it's been remastered and released, I think I actually want to play this game, and I think I'm going to try to play it without a guide and just see what the experience is like. And I'll probably record it because, again, I'm just so fascinated by the idea that they took a story. And I'm not going to spoil anything if you don't know anything about it. But this is not a story that has any type of real happiness to it. As close as I can come without spoiling it, but to give you a rough idea, is if you know the movie Colossus the Forbin Project, this follows a similar path, but in even more harsh and nihilistic results. And so the idea of a video game like this that has multiple endings, and as far as I know, only one of them would be even considered close to a positive outcome, but most people would run into one. And in fact, the game at one point had portions removed because the content was seen as too offensive in certain countries that would make getting that good ending next to impossible unless you really did everything specifically the right way. And again, it's just that this game, of all the stuff that Ellison has written, and I just don't think all of his work is this as depressing as this story, they took this game and decided to make a point-and-click adventure game out of it and release it under a, at the time, fairly large publisher and take a risk. Now, as far as I remember from the coverage I've seen, it did not do very well, understandably, because it is not a happy game. But just the idea that somebody thought that somebody said, let's adapt Ellison's work. Oh, what story? Let's pick this one, and made it into a point-and-click adventure game that's handled very seriously. So it's not handled as a joke. It is actually, there are very adult concepts, themes, and ideas in it. And the game, from my understanding, treats them fairly seriously and with the gravity they deserve. So again, I'm so fascinated by stuff like this, but this in particular is one that you can actually play. I'm not trying to do an ad for it, but I guess I am, because for $7, I probably would have paid $7 just to play this game. But the fact that it comes as, I think it's a 5-game bundle, if you have any interest at all, at least take a look, because again, of all the things that I would have thought would be made into a point-and-click adventure game, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream would certainly never have been one of them. Later.